Pope comes to America. What does this message mean for us as we look toward the end times? This is SkyWatchTV News for Wednesday, September 16th, 2015. I'm Derek Gilbert, joined in studio today by a couple of special guests, a Pulitzer Prize-nominated investigative journalist and the executive editor for Charisma magazine, Troy Anderson, and a veteran broadcaster, commentator on Fox News, the History Channel, and professor of eschatology, Paul McGuire, together the co-authors of a forthcoming book, The Babylon Code. Gentlemen, Pope Francis comes to the United States. He'll be here the 22nd through about the 25th, if I remember the dates correctly. He's made some proclamations this year, his encyclical on climate change, guided by a gentleman who openly says that the earth has about 6 billion people too many. What do we as Christians take from that, Paul? I mean, what kind of a message is the Pope putting forward here?
Well, the Pope's message is extremely bothersome and troublesome because it's contrary to the Scriptures. So on one hand, we have the Trojan horse of climate change and sustainable development, which in reality is nothing more than reducing the world's population and artificially forcing the middle class and lower middle class to live at far lower levels of existence. Now, it's interesting that the Pope's message doesn't call for the elite or 1% to sacrifice anything. It calls for the lower middle class and middle class to sacrifice even more. So the Pope is really a proponent of Marxist wealth redistribution, number one, which is not biblical. And number two is the Pope's message is in direct contradiction with the Scripture where Jesus Christ, or God says in the Old Testament, be fruitful and multiply, which is what traditional Catholicism used to represent. So he's opposing being fruitful and multiplying in favor of population reduction. So on both counts, he's opposing the Scripture. So I'm very troubled by a Pope who's in such blatant violation of two basic scriptural principles.
Yeah, now, to be fair, in his encyclical, the Pope did say that population has nothing to do with climate change, but then on the other hand, John Schnellenhuber, who's his advisor, his science advisor, again, is the fellow who openly says we need to get rid of 6 billion people. So it's a mixed message, because on the one hand, he's being guided by a fellow who is a full believer in the Malthusian crisis that we all face, while at the same time saying we need to change the way we live and lower our standard of living to avoid overheating the planet. Not to mention, again, the Marxist economics that he proposes. Troy, in your investigation for the book, the Babylon Code, the consensus that the commentators or the experts that you talked to, what did they see coming? How grave a threat did they perceive climate change to be, if at all? Or basically, how do they interpret the message of, say, a future one-world government?
Yeah, so we interviewed over 100 different, everybody from, faith leaders to prophecy experts to, experts in politics and economics and science. And so some of the prophecy experts, expressed concern about this push for global governance, the globalism we see going on today. Chapters 10 and 11 talk about, some of these summits that are coming up and, on sustainable development and climate change. And there's UN documents that talk about the next 15 years being some of the most transformative in human history. And I interviewed like Mark Hitchcock, who's an esteemed Bible prophecy expert, and he said, he sees, this push towards globalism happening at, an increasing rate, and he said it's staggering to watch, how this is all coming together now. And that's sort of a consensus. Like Pastor Greg Laurie, he made similar comments and expressed concerns that the Bible talks about, one day the Antichrist will arise and that he will oversee a global system, a global economic system and religious system. And so we see many of the possible precursors of this happening now. And so that's why we wrote the book. We wanted to help wake people up and alert them that Bible prophecy predicted something like this, and it seems like this is happening.
There are scholars of Bible prophecy who see in the Pope the personification of Mystery Babylon, that the Roman religion will be the global one world religion of the end times. And of course, the United Nations is the embodiment of the concept of a one world government. So you've got the two coming together later this week here in New York City. Do we read anything into that, or are we trying too hard to read prophecy into the news headlines, Paul, when we look at his visit?
Well, as you know, and many of your viewers probably know, the reformers in the Reformation believe very strongly that the Pope and the Vatican would be the global religion of prophecy, and from there, the Antichrist and false prophet would emerge. But there's a little bit of a stretch here because, as we pointed out in the Babylon Code, there have been many different points of view that are still biblical. Some people view Babylon as a global system. One could make the case that contemporary evangelical religion has many popes or many deified leaders that people worship. And there's a lot of false teaching in the Protestant church today, as well as in the Catholic Church. So I think it's too early to draw the definitive conclusion that the Vatican or this Pope is the global one world religion. The Vatican may be in the future, but I think it's too early to make that conclusion. It could be a supra body, an ecumenical body of Protestants, Hindus, Muslims, or whatever, and perhaps organized by the Catholic Church, but the jury is still out, I believe.
Troy, the experts that you consulted, did they have any thoughts, and you talked with some secular leaders as well, any consensus between them as to how close we might be to some sort of culmination of history?
Well, I mean, one of the most compelling quotes and interviews that I did was with Billy Graham a couple years ago, and he said that signs of the end of the age are converging for the first time since Jesus made those predictions. And then, Dr. Tim LaHaye wrote the Left Behind series. He made similar remarks, and so did Rabbi Jonathan Cahn and Joel Rosenberg, and it just sort of on down the list. All these prominent faith leaders, prophecy experts believe that we're somewhere in the run-up to this. Of course, only God knows when all these things are happening, but the consensus is that this appears to be happening.
The Babylon Code is a forthcoming book. Paul McGuire and Troy Anderson are the authors. They will be guests on the future episode of SkyWatch TV, future episodes, I should say. And we will look forward to, I hope you will look forward to a fuller discussion of the topics at hand, and look for the book, which will be coming to the SkyWatch TV store. In the meanwhile, we thank you for watching as we keep watch. I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is SkyWatch TV.